The moment my grandfather's will was read, my mother smiled. That should have been my first warning. I sat at the long mahogany conference table inside the lawyer's office, staring at the framed certificates on the wall while my heart pounded in my chest. 3 weeks earlier, we'd buried my grandfather, Arthur Bennett. The only man who had ever truly believed in me. And now, according to my mother, he had left me nothing. Not $1. Not a photograph. Not even a watch. Nothing. Across from me, my mother, Linda, folded her hands neatly in her lap and sighed dramatically. "I'm sorry, Ethan," she said softly. The sympathy in her voice felt rehearsed. "Your grandfather made his choices." I looked at her. Something about the way she avoided my eyes made my stomach tighten. Because Grandpa Arthur and I had been close. Closer than anyone knew. When I was 12 and got suspended from school, my mother called me a disappointment. Grandpa took me fishing. When I failed my first college semester, my mother told me I'd never amount to anything. Grandpa helped me pay tuition and told me everyone gets lost sometimes. When my small construction business nearly collapsed during a recession, my mother laughed and said I should have gotten a real job. Grandpa quietly loaned me money and never asked for it back. For 32 years, he'd been my safety net. My biggest supporter. My best friend. And now I was supposed to believe he'd forgotten me. It didn't make sense. The lawyer cleared his throat. Arthur Bennett's estate has been distributed according to his final will. He opened a folder. The room became silent. I glanced toward my younger sister, Rachel. She sat beside Mom, wearing designer sunglasses on top of her head despite being indoors. Rachel looked excited. Way too excited. The lawyer continued. The family home will transfer to Linda Bennett. My mother nodded. The lake cabin will transfer to Rachel Bennett. Rachel grinned. The investment portfolio will transfer to Linda Bennett. Another nod. The vacation property in Arizona will transfer to Rachel Bennett. My heart sank. Each item felt like another shovel of dirt being thrown onto a grave. Then the lawyer paused. He adjusted his glasses. Remaining financial assets will be divided between Linda Bennett and Rachel Bennett. That was it. No Ethan. No grandson. No mention whatsoever. I stared at the table. The room felt suddenly smaller. Harder to breathe in. My mother finally looked at me. "There you have it." I swallowed. "That's everything." The lawyer nodded. "According to this document, yes." Rachel couldn't hide her smile anymore. Grandpa always knew who appreciated him. I slowly turned toward her. "What does that mean?" She shrugged. "You hardly visited." The lie hit me like a slap. I had visited Grandpa almost every week. Sometimes more. Rachel hadn't visited in nearly 8 months before his death. Even Mom rarely stopped by unless she needed something. The lawyer began organizing papers. The meeting appeared over. Everyone stood. Everyone except me. Because something felt wrong. Very wrong. Then a memory surfaced. 3 months before Grandpa died, we'd been sitting on the dock at his lake cabin watching the sunset. He'd been weaker then. Cancer had already stolen much of his strength. But his mind remained sharp. Crystal clear. I remembered exactly what he said. "Ethan." "Yeah, Grandpa. If anything ever seems strange after I'm gone." He'd squeezed my shoulder. "Don't stop asking questions." At the time I thought he was talking about grief. Now I wasn't so sure. Back in the lawyer's office, my mother touched my arm. "You need to let this go." Her voice sounded almost urgent. Too urgent. I looked up. "Why?" "What? Why are you in such a hurry for me to accept this?" For the first time, her expression flickered. Only for a second. But I saw it. Fear. Then it vanished. "Ethan, don't embarrass yourself." Rachel rolled her eyes. "Seriously. I stood. My chair scraped loudly across the floor. The lawyer glanced up. Mr. Bennett. I looked directly at him. Can I see the will? My mother's face instantly changed. No. The word came too fast. Too sharp. The lawyer frowned. I'm sorry. Mom forced a smile. He doesn't need to see it. The lawyer looked confused. Actually, beneficiaries and direct family members are entitled to review estate documents. I watched the color slowly drain from my mother's face. Rachel noticed too. Mom. It's unnecessary, Mom said. Now even the lawyer looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Bennett, that's not your decision. Silence. Heavy silence. Finally, he slid the document across the table. I picked it up. My hands trembled. The will was only 1 page long. 1 page. That was odd. Grandpa owned multiple properties, investments, insurance policies, and business holdings accumulated over 50 years. 1 page wasn't enough. Not even close. I flipped it over. Blank. Then I noticed something. Tiny numbers at the bottom corner. Page 1 of 2. My heartbeat stopped. Page 1 of 2. I stared at it. Then slowly looked up. My mother had gone completely pale. Rachel looked confused. The lawyer suddenly froze. His eyes widened. Then he grabbed the document. What the? He flipped through the file again. Once. Twice. 3 times. His expression changed from confusion to shock. Then he whispered something that made my blood run cold. There should be a second page. The room exploded into chaos. And that's when my mother stood up so quickly that her chair crashed backward onto the floor. Her next words made everyone stare at her. No. My mother's voice cracked through the room like a gunshot. Everyone froze. The lawyer stared at her. Rachel stared at her. I stared at her. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then the lawyer slowly stood. Mrs. Bennett. His face had turned ghostly white. Where is page 2? Mom's breathing became shallow. I don't know what you're talking about. The lawyer held up the document. Page 1 clearly indicates there are 2 pages. Rachel frowned. Mom. Mom ignored her. The lawyer walked to a filing cabinet and pulled out another folder. His hands shook as he searched through records. Minutes felt like hours. Finally he found something. A scanned digital copy. His eyes widened. Oh my God. The room went silent. I stepped forward. What? The lawyer looked directly at me. There was a second page. My stomach dropped. Rachel's mouth fell open. Mom looked like she might faint. The lawyer swallowed hard. It was attached when your grandfather signed the will. Then where is it now? Nobody answered. Because everyone already knew. The lawyer slowly turned toward my mother. Mrs. Bennett. She immediately looked away. And that told me everything. The second page hadn't disappeared. Someone had removed it. Someone sitting in this room. Rachel suddenly stood. Wait. She looked between us. Are you saying Mom hid part of Grandpa's will? Rachel, Mom snapped. No. But Rachel wasn't backing down. Then why are you acting like this? For the first time in my life, I saw genuine fear in my sister's eyes. Because she was beginning to realize she might not have been told the truth either. The lawyer rubbed his forehead. This changes everything. I stepped closer. What was on page 2? He hesitated. I need to recover the original copy before discussing its contents. Why? Because if a portion of the will was intentionally removed, we are entering legal territory. My mother suddenly grabbed her purse. I'm leaving. The lawyer's voice became firm. I wouldn't recommend that. She froze. The room felt charged with electricity. Then Rachel quietly asked the question none of us wanted to ask. Mom. She swallowed. Did Grandpa actually leave Ethan something? Mom looked away. That was answer enough. Rachel stepped back as if she'd been slapped. The drive home felt unreal. Rain hammered my windshield. Questions swirled through my head. Why would Mom hide part of Grandpa's will? Why would Grandpa want me to keep asking questions? What was on that missing page? And why had he specifically prepared for something to go wrong? By the time I reached my house, my phone was vibrating. Rachel. I almost ignored it. Then answered. What? She sounded shaken. I didn't know. I remained silent. I swear, Ethan. You expect me to believe that? I do. For the first time ever, Rachel sounded honest. Not spoiled. Not arrogant. Just scared. She exhaled. I found something. My pulse quickened. What? Grandpa's journals. I sat upright. Grandpa kept journals for decades. Every day. Every thought. Every memory. Everything. Where? The lake cabin. I grabbed my keys immediately. 2 hours later, Rachel and I stood inside the old cabin. The place smelled like pine wood and lake water. For a moment I could almost hear Grandpa laughing from the porch. Rachel pointed toward a storage chest. I found this. Inside sat 12 worn-leather journals. Years of Grandpa's life. We spent hours reading. Stories from childhood. Military service. Marriage. Business struggles. Family memories. Then, shortly after midnight, I found an entry written only 6 weeks before Grandpa died. My hands started shaking. Rachel. What? You need to read this. She moved beside me. The entry read. I know Linda thinks I don't see what she's doing. Rachel's eyes widened. I kept reading. She believes money belongs to whoever grabs it first. My heart pounded. The words continued. If anything happens to my final instructions, Ethan will know where to look. Silence. Rachel looked up. What does that mean? I turned the page. The next entry made my blood freeze. I have spent years hiding the truth because I wanted peace in this family. But after I'm gone, peace built on lies serves no one. Rachel whispered. What truth? I flipped pages frantically. Then found another entry. And suddenly everything changed. Because Grandpa wasn't writing about money. He wasn't writing about inheritance. He was writing about me. Specifically me. The entry read. Ethan deserves to know who he really is. The cabin became deathly quiet. Rachel stared at the page. Then at me. Then back at the page. What does that mean? I couldn't answer. Because I had no idea. Grandpa was my grandfather. Wasn't he? I turned pages desperately. Searching. Looking for answers. Then we heard footsteps outside. Rachel jumped. The porch boards creaked. Someone was approaching the cabin. At nearly 1 in the morning. Slowly. Deliberately. A shadow appeared through the window. Then another. Someone knocked. 3 slow knocks. My heart nearly exploded. Rachel whispered. Who is that? I walked to the door. Opened it. And nearly collapsed. Because standing on the porch was my mother. Tears streamed down her face. She looked broken. Defeated. Like someone carrying a secret for decades. Then she said 7 words that changed my entire life. Your grandfather wasn't your grandfather, Ethan. And before I could process those words, she added something even worse. He was your father. He was your father. The words hit me harder than any punch ever could. I stared at my mother. The cabin seemed to tilt around me. Rachel looked just as stunned. What did you just say? Mom stepped inside. Rain dripped from her coat. Her hands trembled so badly she could barely hold herself together. Ethan. No. I backed away. No. Grandpa was my grandfather. Tears rolled down her cheeks. He wasn't. For several seconds nobody spoke. The silence felt suffocating. Finally Rachel whispered. Mom, explain. Mom sat heavily in Grandpa's old rocking chair. The same chair where he'd spent countless evenings watching the sunset over the lake. She looked exhausted. Like she'd been carrying a weight for 32 years. Then she began. When I was 17, I got pregnant. My chest tightened. My parents were furious. Rachel sat down slowly. Mom wiped her eyes. The baby's father disappeared the moment he learned about the pregnancy. I already knew that story. I'd heard it my entire life. The deadbeat father. The man who abandoned us. The man whose face I'd never seen. But then Mom said something unexpected. Arthur wasn't my father. The room froze. What? He was my stepfather. I stared. She nodded. My biological father died when I was 10. My mother remarried Arthur 3 years later. Suddenly pieces of my childhood began rearranging themselves. Grandpa had entered Mom's life when she was already a teenager. Not as a biological father. As a stepfather. Mom looked toward the journals. When I became pregnant, I wanted to give you up for adoption. My heart shattered. Rachel gasped. Mom covered her face. I was terrified. I was young. I had nothing. The words hurt. But they also sounded honest. Painfully honest. Then she smiled through tears. Arthur wouldn't let me. I felt my throat tighten. He told me every child deserves to be loved. My eyes burned. He said if nobody else wanted responsibility, he would take it. Mom looked directly at me. And he did. The room blurred. Because suddenly every memory made sense. Every fishing trip. Every school event. Every birthday. Every difficult moment. Grandpa had never acted like a grandfather. He'd acted like a father. Because he was one. Maybe not biologically. But in every way that mattered. Mom continued. He worked extra shifts to help raise you. He paid for your clothes. He paid for your school. He helped buy your first truck. Tears streamed down my face. I remembered all of it. Every sacrifice. Every kindness. Every moment. Then Mom delivered another blow. The reason he left everything to you was because he considered you his son. I closed my eyes. The pain became overwhelming. All these years. And I never knew. Rachel looked devastated. Why didn't anyone tell us? Mom lowered her head. Because I was ashamed. Nobody spoke. Finally I asked the question that mattered most. The second page. Mom nodded slowly. I removed it. The confession echoed through the cabin. I was angry. At him. At myself. She took a shaky breath. Arthur always loved you differently. The words weren't cruel. They were sad. He never stopped protecting you. I stared at the floor. Mom continued. When he updated the will, page 2 left nearly everything to you. Rachel's eyes widened. So Grandpa knew? Yes. How much? Mom swallowed. The family home. The investment accounts. The lake cabin. The Arizona property. The business holdings. My pulse raced. Everything. Grandpa had left me everything. Not because I was his favorite. Because he was trying to provide for his son. The son he'd raised. The son he'd loved. The son he'd chosen. Mom began crying harder. I convinced myself it wasn't fair. I finally looked at her. She seemed smaller than I'd ever seen her. Not powerful. Not controlling. Just broken. And then I did something horrible. Her voice cracked. I stole page 2. The truth settled over us. Ugly. Painful. Real. For a long moment nobody moved. Then Rachel quietly asked, "What happens now?" 3 weeks later, we sat once again in the lawyer's office. The same room. The same table. But everything had changed. The recovered will had been validated. Page 2 had been entered into probate. The inheritance was legally mine. Every asset. Every property. Everything Arthur Bennett owned. The lawyer finished speaking. Then everyone looked at me. Waiting. Mom sat silently. She looked terrified. Like she expected revenge. Maybe she deserved it. Maybe not. I thought about all the years she'd lied. All the years she'd hidden the truth. All the pain she'd caused. Then I thought about Arthur. About the man who spent his life teaching me what family really meant. I already knew what he'd want. I stood. My decision is final. The lawyer nodded. I looked toward Mom. Then Rachel. Then the papers. The assets stay in the family. Mom blinked. What? The house stays yours. Fresh tears appeared. The Arizona property stays with Rachel. Rachel covered her mouth. I continued. The investments will be divided equally. Mom began sobbing. Ethan. I shook my head. No. She looked confused. I smiled sadly. This isn't about what you deserve. The room became silent. It's about what Dad would have wanted. Dad. Not Grandpa. Dad. The moment I said it aloud, tears filled my eyes. Because for the first time in my life, the word felt right. 6 months later, I stood at Arthur Bennett's grave. A warm autumn breeze moved through the cemetery. The leaves glowed gold beneath the afternoon sun. I placed fresh flowers beside the headstone. Then I sat quietly. Just like we used to sit together at the lake. Hey, Dad. The word still felt strange. But good. I finally know. My eyes drifted toward the horizon. For a moment, I imagined him smiling. That familiar smile. The one that always made hard days easier. You didn't leave me houses. You didn't leave me money. You didn't leave me investments. The wind rustled softly through the trees. You left me something worth more. A father. A real father. The kind who chooses you every single day. The kind who stays. The kind who sacrifices. The kind who loves without conditions. I smiled through tears. And suddenly I understood why he told me not to stop asking questions. Because sometimes the truth isn't hidden to protect a secret. Sometimes it's hidden to protect a heart. And sometimes the second page changes everything. Not because of what it gives you, but because of who it reveals loved you all along.